In the fast-paced world of business, finding a clear path to profitability can be a challenge. Welcome to 0 to 100 with your host, Jared Guy Randolph, seasoned business and finance expert. Tune in for actionable insights and strategies to accelerate your business success.
Hello, Accelerators. Today on 0 to 100, I am proud to introduce our guest, Cynthia Facundo, who is the founder of Bookkeeping Key, a 40-year veteran in the bookkeeping industry. She is a member of Goldman Sachs National Association of Women Business Owners and a member of the American Institute of Professional Bookkeepers. We're going to cover some really poignant topics that I want you to listen to. Everything from the story that your numbers actually tell, making sure that you're separating your personal and your business expenses the right way so you don't suffer penalties, you don't have issues with the IRS, and most importantly, setting the right financial mindset to be a successful business owner. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Jared Guy Randolph. I am the founder of BoxFi. We are the nation's leading payment consultant, providing business growth solutions through payment processing. And I am excited to share the relationships and network that I have built over my 25-year entrepreneurial journey to help you grow your business and become more profitable. Ladies and gentlemen, let's accelerate together. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us today on 0 to 100.
You're very welcome. I look forward to it.
So we're going to talk about how to properly get into the numbers, how the numbers speak to you, and how they can help you grow your business from a bookkeeping and accounting standpoint. And I'm excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to share what I know.
So you've mentioned before that bookkeeping is more than just keeping track of transactions. It's about creating a strong foundation for business owners. So talk to me about what that strong foundation is and how it helps them make better decisions in their business.
You know, like with anything, having a strong foundation is how you succeed, relationships or whatever. And business is kind of like a relationship, You've got to take care of it. You've got to nurture it. Most people who start their business, they know how to do something. And so they're gung-ho, but they don't realize that there is so much to it. You have to have, you've got to track your numbers. You have no idea you're looking at your revenue thinking, wow, this is great. But you've got expenses, your office, your people, technology. And when you have a good system in place, that really does help track these costs so you can see what is going on. Because if you just go blindly, you will never. A lot of businesses fail because that's exactly what they do.
So let's talk about walking into a business. Day one, what are you looking for that are complete and utter red flags on they're just doing this absolutely wrong that you find consistently you have to correct for most businesses?
Commingling of funds is a very large one. A lot of business owners you've got to have the right mindset. You've got to separate yourself from your business. Yes, you own the business, but it's a separate entity altogether. So you cannot just spend money crazily and mingle your funds, because if you're set up a certain way, like if you're an S Corp or C Corp, the IRS will say, you know what? You're just spending money like it's your own personal piggy bank. They'll strip those names from you. They will take the corporate veil, because when you become an LLC, an S Corp or C Corp, that's where you're separated from the individual, separated from the business. Now, if you start acting like you're one and the same, well, you will become one and the same, because the IRS can come and say, you're not separate anymore. And that's your asset protection, right? You become an LLC for those reasons, to separate yourself from your business, your personal assets from your business assets. So, commingling of funds is a really big one.
So, talk to me about the commingling of funds and what could happen to that S corp or that C corp. Does it also apply to LLCs? Have you ever seen it happen where, because the books were such a mess for a business, that the government said, no, this is just you using it as your personal piggy bank? What penalties did they actually suffer for doing that?
Luckily, I've never seen it happen, but I have seen CPAs say, I will not file your tax return
Oh,
until you get your books in order. I actually had a cleanup job last year where that happened. They came to me and said, our CPA won't file our tax return because the books were such a mess.
mm.
So when your books are a mess like that, that's one thing. The CPA will not do your tax returns. You could actually pay more taxes because things are not in the accurate places they need to be. A lot of things can happen.
So, this I think is really great because you've said before the story your numbers tell. And how can that impact your day to day business if your numbers aren't telling the right story? So, this is our audience are business owners, they're entrepreneurs. So, they're doing this on a daily basis, but a lot of times they're not looking at their numbers on a daily basis. They might be looking at it monthly, quarterly, or even once a year. What
Yes.
does that mean for their business?
Well, what that means is they're making decisions off of faulty information, you know, and probably what they're doing is going in and looking at their bank account and saying, I have money in the bank, so they spend it. They're not planning for their taxes. They're not planning for maybe any big expenses that are coming up. And if you wait till the end of the year, you really can't do a lot of tax planning because you have no idea what your numbers look like. So you could end up feasibly paying more taxes. And it costs you money. If you come to me and you haven't done your books accurately, guess what? We're going to charge you for that whole year at a cleanup price. So it ends up costing you more money all the way around.
So, let's say you're talking to the audience and you're advising them on hiring a bookkeeper or even making sure that their bookkeeper is doing exactly what they need to be doing for that business. What are some of the key things that you should have as an expectation for your bookkeeper?
I think one is very good communication. You need to really, have good communication with your bookkeeper, good records, have receipts. The IRS is really cracking down on all these things. Good receipts, go through your books with your bookkeeper. We have monthly meetings with clients, and we have clients we do quarterly. We have quarterly meetings with them. We go through their books with them. I firmly believe as a business owner, you need to know what's going on in your business and in your numbers. I have seen what happens is, and not everyone's this way, but I have seen where someone lost $500,000 because they were not watching their books, and their bookkeeper she was making invoices here, paying them, making invoices to her husband. It ended up over the course of 5 years, $500,000, and he never looked at the books. Now, not to say you can't trust it has nothing to do with trust. It has to do with being accountable and being in your business and seeing what is going on.
So, if you're a business owner and let's say you're doing $5 million a year in gross revenue, what are some key things that you should do in terms of that communication, scheduling, when you should be looking at your books and your reports to make sure that you stay on top of everything, on top of having to work in and on the business? Like, what's the advice you would say if you're the CEO of a company? What should you be doing?
You should definitely make sure you at least have a quarterly meeting with your bookkeeper. At least quarterly. At 5 million, I would say monthly. Meetings usually go on for 1 hour. We have a 1 hour meeting. By that time, you should have already had some communication with your bookkeeper and look at your just go over your numbers. You don't have to really be an accountant or a bookkeeper to look at these numbers across the way. Make sure you get a report that lists month to month to month to month so you can see trends. That's where you can start seeing if there is like office expense shoots up really high, you need to figure out why. Is something get miscoded? Is someone doing something they shouldn't? Looking at margins too, that is a really good indicator. Like, your gross profit margins. Even though your revenue goes up, your profit margin should stay about the same unless something extraordinary happened. And that's what I mean by telling your story. You start looking at your numbers and you start realizing, oh, you know what? That was when we were closed for a week because we had a hurricane,
Right.
you know? So if you really start looking at your numbers, you will really start understanding, okay, now, you understand what's happening. It takes a shorter time to look at it and you really know what's going on because that's really what you want. You don't have to be an expert. You just want to be, you want to be accountable. You want to make sure you're looking at these because your bookkeeper, they're human. They could make a mistake. You know your business better than anyone, so to go over it with them is a very good thing. And it helps them to start understanding your business more.
Mhm.
I have one client where I've known him. He was my second client and I go to his shop. We were together when I first started. His shop was a mess. We've been working together for 13 years now.
Awesome.
And I go there and we look at all of his margins, his client acquisition cost, he's a shop. So his parts cost, labor cost, all of those costs, we make sure we look at. And when we start looking at percentages, that's when you really start digging in because those should not shift a lot.
Mm. It's interesting that you say that, and I want to kind of get down to budgeting for businesses. But even in my businesses last year, I've started to put in certain financial constraints in terms of depending on the category. If it's above 1,000 or above 2,500, I need to sign off on that expense beyond salaries.
Right.
And then for each category, it's like we know in general we're spending $10,000 in this category, 20,000 in this category, 5,000 in this category. If it goes beyond that within the month, we need to review that so we can actually control what's happening there. Could it be the cost of that product went up? If it did,
Exactly.
should we be going and looking for a new supplier or should we be renegotiating the terms with that supplier? So breaking it down into increments has really helped our business with much better financial management. How would you advise businesses to budget? Because it's funny, it's like you have expenses, but I don't feel like the conversation around budgeting is the same as for a business owner for somebody who is personally budgeting.
That's a hard one. It's so hard to get business owners to budget. It really is. It's like, it's just like I really said before, it's the mindset of the small business owner. I believe the way I run my business is I try to run it forward, right? When I make decisions, I try to make a decision for the future,
Mhm.
thinking about where I am right now, right? Because I'm a firm believer of, and I say this all the time, and my team laughs at me, but I say, let's throw it into the universe. I truly believe that planning for these things and making it come to fruition, when you start planning it, put it out there physically, it does come to pass. So budgeting is an important thing. And I actually have a really neat cash flow tool
Mhm.
that accounts for the budget.
Mhm.
And what's good about budgeting is if you can rely on your numbers. See, if you have 2 or 3 years of good numbers, you can actually write a really good budget. Now,
Mm.
QuickBooks has the ability to compare your actual numbers to budget numbers.
Mhm.
So you kind of know where you fall and you can adjust your budget. Now, I have something that as a cash flow tool and a budget tool. So what it does, and if this is a good exercise for most small businesses, is that you plan for expenses. You'll say, okay, we're going to have a cash injection in June. So we can make this purchase maybe in July, and you can fill it in and they'll show you the changes. So I think that but people have to be comfortable with that, right? The budgeting and the cash flow. And most people don't even, cash flow is very, very important for everybody, especially small business.
So you mentioned something earlier about mindset, and I kind of want to dig into this. It's a little bit of a segue because we don't typically deal with this when we're talking about finance, but you gave the example of the gentleman that you're working with, his service and parts business, and
Hmm.
it's going back 13 years. When you first met him, his books were an absolute mess. You fixed everything.
He
And to
had
this
no
day,
books.
to this day, you're now still working with him and reviewing everything to make sure it's in line. What shift in his mindset did you see which helped him get over that financial hurdle to realize that, success around just managing his finances properly?
It's very interesting. Now, him and I are like two peas in a pod. He is really like one of my best friends, also, and we push each other. The imposter syndrome. Some days I'll go there and say, man, and he will lift me up, right? So we're both kind of on the same path. So what has shifted him, for one, is he got into some really good groups
Hmm.
where they mentor him, and they're all in the same vein. They all feel the same. They have kind of the same goals. They want to succeed. And it's important to have those type of people around you, no matter what business you're in.
Mhm.
And that's where it shifted for him. So we're always on a quest for the best books on mindset and team building and things like that. I think that you do have to have the mindset that you don't know everything. So you have to be on a path of learning. And I think that numbers and money scare people. When people come to me, they don't even, at first, they don't want to tell me. They'll say, oh my God, my books are so bad. And I'll tell them, I have seen it all. And I'm not here to judge you. I just want to help you. And I think that people have to get over that scaredness. And if they don't want to deal with the IRS, so they don't file the returns for 5 years. And I've seen that too. And I'm like, let's just get it done. Then you can really see what's happening. And then they feel so much better. So I think that you need to face your fear, especially around money,
Mhm.
change your mindset. Yes, we are small businesses, but we don't have to think like that.
Right.
You don't have to think like that.
I love the suggestion of the finding mentors, finding your financial mindset community, reading
Yes.
books. And I do myself a lot of that. And, one thing I can say, I'm for my own selfish reasons, and I'm super blessed because of this. I get to do this podcast and I get to meet people like you.
Yeah.
And
Love it.
there's so much that I take away from this, from that mindset around, listen, I do what I do because I have a passion for it. I love working with merchants. I love being in the payments business. It is a blast because I meet some of the coolest people, but I always want to up my game. I also want to make money doing what I'm doing.
Right.
So having that financial structure in place and the right mindset is tantamount to success. And beyond just this gentleman, you work with over 60 clients. Like that's a really strong book of business. But the clients that you're working with, are there any others, especially your clients who are really top of their game, running really successful businesses? Is there anything that you see them doing that you want all of your clients to replicate to help grow their businesses financially?
Absolutely. They're in it. They want to know about their business. That's really the big thing. Like the one I was talking about. We have meetings all the time, and I just had a meeting with someone this morning who they're just really want to know, what can I do, to keep more profit, tax planning. It's the whole mentality of they want to be the best they can be.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you can see it when you talk to them.
To run a successful business, you have to want to know your numbers.
You
So
can't
that's,
run. You
yeah.
can't run away from them, because that's where people get in trouble. Like I think if, a couple of years ago, I had a gentleman, and he was very small, but we were helping him with his books, and he was like, we're gonna have to quit. I think his wife got sick or something. Well, they came to us just yesterday. His wife was doing his books, and she's like, I don't know what happened. I messed my books up. And I was like, I could see I got in and right away bank balances are $200,000 off and, these types of things. And so you cannot, there's no way to do a tax return from that kind of information. And not just that, and a lot of small businesses do run with the mentality of, I'm just doing this to get money to pay for the next thing.
Right.
If they could just get out of that and think, okay, this is a business I can run where I can either leave it to somebody or sell it, work on it as you're going to sell it for the best possible price you can get.
Hmm.
So I think that people do need, I think, especially small business, they need to shift that the way they think and not think so small.
Mm,
I really do. I think just because you're small doesn't mean you can't run your business properly and grow
right.
and prosper. So
Right.
I do think it's a mindset. And I do think that, I think there's not enough education around that.
Gotcha. Well, listen, I 100% agree with you. And the more and more I think about it and realize that in my business, it is the mindset which then drives you to take those next steps forward. And having proper bookkeeping is really kind of like just foundational, one of the number one things that you need to do. And many of our listeners already know this, but this to me is always sometimes hearing it just reminds you of the things you need to do to elevate your game. And you work with a lot of companies not just on the bookkeeping. And this is kind of something I want to lean into because I think it's important to understand how the entire ecosystem works. You'll do things like you will do workers' comp audits, you'll
Yeah.
prepare the 1099s and a litany of other things. Why is it important for your bookkeeper to be involved or bring that value add to your business?
Well, the truth is, most people like to go to one place. They don't want to have to go here and there and everywhere. And plus, you show your value. It's a value that you're giving your client, and the trust that they can trust you to do this work. You know, if you don't file your 1099s, you can get penalized. If you don't file your franchise tax, you'll get penalized, and then eventually it can get forfeited. You know, then you have to go through the whole step of getting it reinstated. Workers' comp audits, if the numbers aren't accurate, you can pay more work in insurance than you need to.
Mm,
So all those things are important. And who knows your numbers better, hopefully, than your bookkeeper or your accountant, you
hmm
know? So they, if they're keeping it up the way they're supposed to, they know all these numbers.
mm,
And it's up to you also as the owner to not just follow it blindly, which happens a lot. It happens with us. And I always say, look, I want you to look it over. We can go through it because if something goes wrong, guess who they're going to blame?
you.
Right.
Mm,
So we make sure, and in all things that we prepare, we put on there, this is prepared from client information,
mm,
and we do our best to talk to the client. We have questions. We have really good communication with clients because I believe in that. And
mhm,
I make sure that my team does that. And
right.
actually, just today, it was nice. We had a call and he said, I'm so grateful because I said, I am very grateful for my team because I can trust them. It took me a long time to get this team. And he said, I am so grateful for your team also. And that was just a great compliment, you know?
So let's actually talk about teams. What do you think, or who are the essential individuals or service providers that you need to have on your business's finance team?
For me, I have, I do a lot of networking and we have a business lawyer that I network with, because you never know what you're going to need. Employment law, contracts, you want to make sure you get into the right contracts. I also have someone who can help with financial planning. I have relationships with CPAs. I make relationships with everyone who I feel will help my clients.
Beautiful.
So if they come to me and say, I need this contract looked over. We have a client who is a contract lawyer
Mm,
and we try to keep it in our network. I have a lot of different clients. So if one of those clients can help one of my other clients, we try to do that.
Mm, mm. So having that business lawyer, that contract attorney, that right financial advisor, and your CPA are some of the key team members that you need to
Yeah.
have to make sure that you're managing your finances properly as a business owner.
Yes, yes. Because it takes a village. I mean, there's a lot of different pieces to your finances.
It does. And understanding having these individuals in place really structure your business to be a real business. And when you move from being a startup, being a smaller business to a mid-sized to a large business, you have to have that separation of church and state. That's why you have your
Oh,
business finance team. That's why you have
yeah.
your personal finance team. So talk to me about ways in which, and from a mindset standpoint, business owners can start to properly separate their business expenses and their personal expenses. How should they be paying themselves? How should they take money out of the company? Talk to me about how to do it properly as a business owner.
First thing is for sure you get a separate bank account, and you have to really get it in your, and it takes discipline. You've really got to get it in your mind that, you know what, this is my company and this is myself. We're two separate entities. Now, sole proprietor, you are the same, but I would say run it the same way because you want to see what your business is doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because then you go up to the LLC. So you set up a separate bank account
Mm-hmm.
and you get some way to record your revenue and expenses. You know, a software QuickBooks. I hate QuickBooks, but unfortunately, there's a necessary. Anyway, just something. When you're really, really small, just set up an Excel spreadsheet with your revenue and expenses, something to keep track. Now, as a sole proprietor, you can take money out any way you want. Okay. You can move it over. But I would, again, move it from the business to your personal to track it. Because most people don't understand that when you take money out like that, let's just say you have a $50,000 profit, right? And you've drawn out $50,000. When you look at your bank account and it says zero, you're like, but I show a profit. Well, the thing is that 50,000 you drew out does not hit your income statement. It's on your balance sheet. And people have a hard time wrapping their head around that.
Mm.
So you got to be careful on how you spend your money. But as an S corp, you have to draw a salary.
Mm.
That's one way. It's one of the rules. You have to draw a salary and you can take dividends,
Mm-hmm.
and you can set up your dividend quarterly if you like.
Mm-hmm.
With the S corp, you have to pay yourself a reasonable compensation. And that's a gray area people still are trying to figure out, but the best way to do that is to see what job you're doing and go out, look out in the marketplace and see what they're getting paid for that job. As long as you have something like that to back up, because the IRS can go back and say, we don't think you're paying yourself enough. So make sure you're paying yourself. Do not take more dividends than your salary, because then the IRS will say you're avoiding payroll taxes.
Ah.
So you got to be really careful with that stuff.
So with an S corp, if you're not paying yourself enough based on your job title and responsibilities, the IRS can say you're not paying enough. And I'm
Yeah,
assuming there's penalties associated with that. And that's basically because they want to get that payroll tax.
exactly.
Interesting.
So you got to be really careful. Now I have, I am a studier. I love research. So I do have something that kind of helps trying to figure out what your reasonable compensation should be. So you need something like that. You need someone to help you, or go out and to just look around, look at a benchmark report, look at something that says, okay, I'm working this many hours. This is a job I'm doing. And at least you have a basis of what your salary should be.
So let's talk about the tools that you're using right now to operate your business. And AI is in everyone's
Oh
business right
yeah.
now, whether or not
It
you
is.
like it. So how are you using that to stay on top of the massive changes that we constantly see in terms of regulations around taxes and ways that you're helping your businesses that you work with grow through the AI tools you're using.
I love technology. So, and I was talking to my niece this morning, who is my second, and she said, Cynthia, in her technology stuff, because I am always looking for something. And I said, you know what? Because we're a company, you have to stay on the edge of everything or
Yes.
you're going to go extinct. That's just the way it
Yes.
is. You have to adapt. And I told her, I said, look, good old customer service with leading edge technology. That's who we are. We want to make sure that when someone is working with us, that we take care of their needs. They feel comfortable with us. But we also have the tools like AI to look up tax law. Tax law it's complicated, you know? And so AI does make it easy to research. And there are some tools like when you do it that actually gives you the code that you can go and look at the IRS.
Hmm.
So, and then plus I'm a member of a lot of different organizations where I can look up tax law.
Okay.
So that's how I do it.
And that's one of the things I think is really important is those changes in tax law, the changes in regulations that we see, making sure you're working with a bookkeeper who is staying on top of that. And I don't think anyone willingly turns a blind eye. They just might not realize all of the evolution that we're seeing right now. And one of the
Well,
things I'd love for you to talk about is those key regulations that are changing and what business owners need to be aware of and how it could negatively impact their business if they're not.
and I think too another thing is that people there is a thing like you have a bookkeeper. I'm an accountant and I happen to know how to do tax planning and I happen to know how to do all these other things. Now, not all bookkeepers are like that. There's sections. There's the bookkeeper who keeps your books. There's the accountant who can go above that, right?
Hmm.
Then you have a tax planner, then a tax preparation. Now, those are all different buckets. So I think that you need to be careful when not every bookkeeper can do all the different things.
Hmm.
So if that's what you want, you need to seek someone out who does that.
Hmm. Mhm.
Because I know businesses who they have their bookkeeper and then they have someone who does their taxes.
Hmm.
So I think it's important to make that distinction because some people do come to you and think that you're going to do everything for them. I just happen to be able to do that stuff. Okay. So, but I do think that clients need to know there are different buckets and it just depends on what is it that you need, and that affects the cost too, right? So that's most businesses, they don't see bookkeeping as important until the
Hmm.
IRS is after them.
Hmm.
Then they know it is.
So talk to me about the FinCEN reporting for
The
LLCs and the
BOI.
changes that are happening right now.
They're still trying to figure out if that's going to happen. But if you don't do it, it's an over a $500 penalty a day.
And for the audience, in case those of you who are not familiar with this, talk to me about what FinCEN reporting is.
The beneficial, oh God, I just know it's BOI. I keep forgetting the whole thing. What it is, it actually is, it's to report the owners of the business. And it's
Beneficial
from
ownership,
FinCEN. Yes,
beneficial ownership information reporting.
that's
By
it.
the way, audience, we look things up in real time because I
Yes,
don't remember half the acronyms in my business. So there you go.
because we're
That's what it
just
is.
always talking about BOI. I know what that is. Yes. And it's reported not to the IRS, but to, the FinCEN, because what they're trying to do is crack down on money laundering. So they want to know who operates the business, who are the owners, you know. And you have to be careful because, like, for an accountant, there's a line between doing legal and doing accounting.
Mm.
So I actually will do my own BOI. I probably will not do it for clients, but I do have a lawyer who will do it. And I actually have a service too that will do the reports.
Mm.
because it's a fine line, and a lot of our insurances won't cover it if it's not, if something happens down the line, they won't cover that.
Oh, so interesting. If you're not doing it properly, insurance will do a look back and not cover like your
Like if someone,
general liability?
yes,
Wow.
yeah, some insurance will, but not very many. And it is a line between accounting and legal, so you got to be very careful. So
Mm,
I just decided I got enough on my plate. I don't need that too.
mm,
So
mm,
I have a service that does it, and I also know a lawyer who does it.
mm.
Just safer.
So, as we're now talking about some of the things that businesses need to look out for, like the beneficial ownership information reporting for the FinCEN is financial crimes something
Yes.
or the other.
Yes.
So
Yes.
since we're talking about those changes and staying on top of making sure you're reporting and doing things properly for your business, let's talk about staying on top of your tax obligations and things like franchise and sales tax. What are some of the common mistakes that business owners are making in that arena?
Well, okay, like for your franchise tax, if your address changes and you don't let them know, of course, all the letters will go to your old address. Most business owners don't keep up with, oh, it's due on this date. So they'll let it pass. Then before you know it, the franchise has been deactivated. And so you got to make sure that you keep the addresses correct, because they'll send, and it depends on who the registered agent is too. They will send all the letters to that address. So make sure that that's accurate.
Hmm.
Make sure that you do file on time. The franchise in Texas is a $50 penalty, but everything is penalized. And if you owe taxes on the franchise, it's even more. That's if you don't owe taxes in
Hmm.
Texas.
Hmm.
So in sales tax, you've got to make sure you pay your sales taxes due by the 20th of every month. If you're a monthly filer, if you're a quarterly filer, it's due on the 20th after the third month. And if you don't pay your sales tax, you get penalized there, and they can revoke your sales tax certificate.
Wow.
Yeah, so you really do need to keep up, and that's another thing a good service will do for you. We do sales taxes for our clients, so we know the dates they're due. We do the franchise tax, and we make sure that they're compliant.
Great. So, before we get into our rapid fire section, which is always fun, I want you to talk to me about how you choose the right entity. And mainly because our business owners, our audience are business owners that are experienced. But let's say you're an LLC. When do you know you should convert to an S Corp or a C Corp?
Usually, I have my LLCs convert when it makes sense, because when you convert to the S corp, so the LLC is a Schedule C on your tax return, your
Mhm.
1040. When you convert to the S corp, you have to have a whole different tax return.
Mm,
So there's some things that are different now, and you have to make sure it makes sense for you. I have something that I can calculate. Does this make sense? So you're going to have a whole other tax return. So that's a cost. Now you're going to have to pay yourself payroll. So you have payroll cost, and of course payroll taxes, because you got to match the tax, right? So you have to make sure that it makes sense to you. And of course you've got to keep, now you have your meeting notes. So you've got to make sure that you stay up on that at least once a year. Put something in your meeting notes, you know. Ideally, it should be quarterly. If you buy a piece of equipment, you actually should record it. There's some things with the S corp that you don't have to do with the LLC, and then it's a flow through. So it does help save on self-employment tax.
mm,
You don't
excellent.
have to pay, when you do an LLC, you pay the full self-employment tax. When you're an S corp, of course, the business absorbs half of it, 0.0765. Now, most businesses will become the S corp. Now, the C corp is if you're going to eventually have many investors, that makes sense for larger corporations. A lot of companies were becoming C corps because they had the 21% tax rate. So that was beneficial for them. So you have to just think of all those little different things and see if it makes sense for your company.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So before we wrap, we are going to do our rapid fire. Are you ready to go, Cynthia?
I'm ready.
All right, baby. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
If it were a zombie apocalypse and you had to leave your home and protect your family, what would be your weapon of choice?
I hate weapons. I would go to my brother's.
Your brother's your weapon of choice. Okay, I will accept that because there's no non-answers. You have to answer, so that's awesome.
My weapon of choice is my brother.
What is one of the top books you would recommend that our audience of business owners and entrepreneurs read?
Oh, I love Atomic Habits.
We're literally now the third guest that we've had.
That's a great book.
Said that. It's one of my favorites. I've reviewed that.
There's another book called The Radical Edge, I believe. That's a really good book. I love that book too. I think I've read it 3 times.
The Radical.
Let me look real quick. I love that book. It talks about how we're in the box when we make decisions or outside the box when we make decisions. It talks about how we make decisions.
Okay. I'm going to add that to my Amazon.
It's a really, really good book.
What are 3 money-saving strategies that you would recommend for our audience for 2025?
Make sure that I would, as a vendor, negotiate your vendor cost. That helps a lot. Also watch your cash flow. I would pay bills 2 times a month. That really helps on cash flow, helps you save money. You can float that money, invest it, and just track your expenses. Subscriptions, those are a big one. Dues and subscriptions. People will sign up for something and they forget to turn it off. So look at that account. Make sure that everything that you don't need is not there. That will save you money.
Awesome. Let's say I am Publishers Clearinghouse or someone else who's just really rich, and you're a business doing $10 million in sales annually, and I walk through your front door and I give you a $300,000 check. How would you advise that business owner to invest that $300,000 to grow their profits over the next 12 months?
That's a very good question. I would invest it in property. Real estate.
I love that. And invest and if you can invest in real estate that will impact your business. So you have that write off and you can operate your business out of it.
Absolutely.
Could be, a double whammy. All right. Last and final question. What is the biggest obstacle you've had to overcome in your life or business to build the success that you have today?
Myself.
Yep.
I'm the mountain sometimes. There's a book about that too. So I think that I sometimes sabotage myself. I don't feel like, the imposter syndrome until one of my clients is like, I am so grateful for you. Then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing okay.
Awesome.
So it's myself.
Cynthia, please tell the guests where they can connect with you.
We're at the Bookkeeping Key. We are on the web, www.bookkeepingkey.com. And just fill out a form and we'll be glad to talk to you.
Awesome. Cynthia Facundo, thank you so much for joining us on 0 to 100.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks for tuning in to 0 to 100 podcast. We hope you feel inspired and ready to accelerate your business. Remember, your journey to success starts with a single step. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving for greatness. For more resources and show notes, visit jaredguyrandolph.com. We'll see you next time.